The United States Supreme Court heard oral arguments this morning on a critical case concerning tariffs. And it is going to be one of the first times this bench addresses the executive overreach that has become a trademark of convicted felon Donald Trump's regime 2.0. The Attorney General for the state of Oregon, Dan Rayfield, somebody that you guys know very well here at this channel, he was there this morning in Washington, D.C. He flew there from Oregon. Why? Because he was one of the states that was a coalition that brought the first lawsuit to challenge the unconstitutional and illegal reciprocal tariffs that Trump has imposed on trade partners and other foreign nations. And he joined me to be able to not only talk about that case, but other important litigation that he's handling right now. And joining me now is somebody who is not a stranger to those of you that join me at the Katie Phang News Channel, but I am thrilled that he's joining me on East Coast time. I know it's got to be a little bit of a difference for you, but it's the Oregon Attorney General, Dan Rayfield. Dan, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So, Dan, I let everybody know in the intro that you haven't heard that you flew all the way to Washington, D.C. to go spend time in the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States, because you were a part of a coalition of plaintiffs that brought suit concerning the illegal and unconstitutional use of a federal statute by Donald Trump, who's now decided that executive overreach is kind of the thing for him to do. And his use of an emergency statute to be able to impose reciprocal, and I'll put that in quotes, reciprocal tariffs with trade partners and with foreign nations. Your kind of high-level takeaways on how it went this morning with oral arguments.
Well, first of all, maybe we wouldn't have flown out here. I just learned that you listened to that from the comfort of your home this morning. But it was a very important case. And we talked a little bit about this the last time I was on here. Okay. This is really a consistent approach by this president to try and gather more executive power. And I think when you listen to the terminology that was going on in the courtroom today, if you're not a lawyer, it can seem pretty overwhelming at times with like words like major questions, non-delegation doctrine. I think it's so much more simpler than that. It is Congress really created specific statutes for tariffs. And they had to do that because the Constitution gives Congress the only power to set tariffs. It's not that they gave a little bit to the president, a little bit to the courts, right? It's solely situated within Congress's power. And they gave a little bit of that power to the president, but with really safeguards for the economy. And so the justices were really grappling with that today. In this statute that no other president has used, an emergency statute, IEPA is what you'll commonly hear about. Is this an abuse of his power in a way that no other president has used? If you listen to what the federal government says, and I think it was even Chief Justice Roberts talked about it at the very beginning. It was like, well, federal government, you're saying you can tax anything or put a tariff on them. We're calling them hidden taxes, but you can put a tariff on anything at any amount for any length for any reason, and nobody can really review that. And that would be, too much power, given by Congress to the president, and which are really foundational issues.
So I always hope for intellectual honesty, Dan, when we deal with our Supreme Court justices.
You get the wrong person on that.
Well, look, I mean, I'm not naive, though. Let me be very clear. And the thing about the conservative justices is they love to live in the land of originalism, strict constructionism, right? This idea that if it's not in the statute, it's something that you really can't do. And it's pretty darn clear here that the statute does not include the word tariffs. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but to the point you just made a couple of minutes ago, it kind of has to be there, right? I mean, if there was an intent by Congress to give the president of the United States the ability to be able to travel under this emergency statute and to do something like the tariffs that he has done, which, to be clear, have only hurt Americans, and it doesn't mean just working class Americans. I'm talking all Americans have been damaged by this. Then Congress would have intended it and they would have put it in there. But it clearly is not included in the IEPA statute.
Yeah, and there's this phrase that you'll hear, judges or your lawyers throw around with the major questions doctrine is that you can't hide, or you're not intending to hide an elephant in a mouse hole, right? And this is unquestionably the way that the Trump presidency is talking about this, an incredible, massive power. If you truly could set tariffs at 1,000% on maple syrup because you didn't like the way the hockey season was going here in America, right? I mean, that's a wild example, but that's the type of, odd results that you could have if you follow their logic. And they just didn't do that. And I think probably more appropriate, right, is that Congress actually contemplated all of these things. Hey, if we have a trade imbalance, what should we do? Oh, let's create a specific statute for that. Right, if we're threatening industries because there's an imbalance of your manipulations in the market, we've got specific statutes to address that. And the president didn't like those. Interesting thing is he used them in the past, used them in the first 4 years, not using them now. And so it's very bizarre to sit there and think that Congress would contemplate it in this one situation, use the right language, and then in a brand new statute, a very different statute, not even mention it. So I think, justices were grappling with that today, unquestionably.
I was surprised pleasantly to see this particular line of commentary that came from Neil Gorsuch, who we normally don't look to for expressing concerns about executive overreach, but he did warn of a, quote, one-way ratchet toward the gradual but continual accretion of power in the executive branch and away from the people's elected representatives in Congress. I mean, putting aside, I think, the impetuosity on the part of Republicans in Congress right now as we hit day 36, now historically the longest shutdown in American history, putting aside that congressional issue, I was, again, pleasantly surprised to see that Neil Gorsuch is acknowledging that there is kind of a slippery slope here when it comes to ceding more ground to what is supposed to be a co-equal branch of government.
Yeah, that was one of the most, I would say, intense portions of the questioning that Neil Gorsuch was going on. It was so subtle, but so powerful in the implications about that ratcheting of power that Justice Gorsuch was talking about. It was amazing to be a part of that conversation. I think it's very difficult at times. I think all of us will see a decision that comes out of the Supreme Court that we don't like, or we'll see one that maybe we do. And I think it's very easy in society to question the integrity of any elected official, anyone sitting on the bench. And I think we really got to avoid that. But what you really felt, it was palpable in that courtroom today for people that are doubting, where we are in society right now, is these justices were doing their absolute best to grapple with very difficult questions about how and what our democracy should look like, and how it was intended to be. It was a very heavy. I thought that was one of the most significant moments of that oral argument this morning. I think that Americans, if they could hear that and really hone in on what he was trying to get at, it would be really important for people to understand why that dangerous accumulation of power in the executive, why we tried to prevent that in the first place here in America.
So I will say kudos to your team at the Office of the Attorney General in Oregon for the incredible note that was posted in the media section of your website. I will say two things. One, I was stunned to see that Trump's tariff policies could tag Oregon businesses more than $1 billion, which is a huge amount of money, and one that I think people really need to appreciate. And that's just one state in our beautiful union. But then you also gave kudos to Ben Gutman for the work that he did as the Oregon Solicitor General. And I want to say, as a fellow trial lawyer, I appreciate you doing that, because I think that he did an exceptional job on behalf of the coalition of plaintiffs to be able to do these oral arguments. It's not easy to do SCOTUS arguments at all. And so my hat off to you, Dan, for recognizing the hard work here. I think it's a great way to maybe springboard to another important litigation that you spearheaded, again, as a part of a coalition of attorneys general and other concerning SNAP benefits. And the fact that we just talked about Oregon businesses facing more than $1 billion in losses, we have to talk about it in the context of just people in general in Oregon and across the U.S. facing the loss of SNAP benefits to the tune of 42 million Americans. Two separate federal judges have told the Trump administration, pony up the money. Trump administration says, we only have about 4.6 billion. That doesn't even fulfill half of what the month of November needs. Oregon is waiting for its money. What's next, Dan, when it comes to this case?
Yeah. And first, real quick, Katie, just on I want to talk about how all these cases, and you mentioned this, Ben Gutman was out front leading the charge. We have a lot of attorneys that are out front leading the charge on a National Guard case. They're kind of the shiny hood ornaments, but just also for people to know is you've got amazing staff that are working 60 to 80 hours a week in Oregon. You've got other attorneys that aren't necessarily doing the bright and shiny work of arguing the case in the Supreme Court. And those people are absolutely essential to making this work. And you have those folks in every attorney general's office across this country are working incredibly hard in ways where there is a sense of patriotism to the motivation behind what they're doing. And it's amazing to be a part of their team. Just know that this is huge teams in all of these states doing this. And the SNAP lawsuit is just another wonderful example of everybody coming together and recognizing a massive problem. And this is, there's some cases that can really frustrate you and anger you. And this is one that like just rises to the absolute top for me, but especially in the broader narrative of what's going on in this country where we are yanking, healthcare benefits. We've already decreased the amount of food assistance. There's people out there talking right now that we are going to be close to a period of hunger that, goes all the way back to the Great Depression. That's this trend that we're on in America right now. And then at the same time, you got tariffs increasing the prices of the things that people are buying, right? It is this affordability crisis, and we are messing with people's food. And hunger is not something that Democrats, Republicans should never tolerate. And no president in the history, that's right, in the history of this country has ever tried to leverage food assistance in this political way, in the way that they're doing it. And I get they say they don't have enough money. I disagree. I think that there's other steps that we may take along the way here pretty shortly to push even harder, because I don't think you can let people go hungry in America. That is absolutely un-American. That's not what anybody voted for when they voted for President Donald Trump. I know that for an absolute fact. It's just incredibly disheartening when you see so many people in need. And that we have to go into a court to say these things. These are like common sense things. If you could ask any kid at any table at dinner time across this country, and if you gave them these options, the answers are real clear. You release the money, you get as much of that money out the door as quickly as possible so that people can have food. I could ramble on for a while, Katie, on that, but it's very frustrating.
Not at all. And you are a gentleman by acknowledging that there are just legion of people that are working together professionally and giving support to make sure that this litigation gets across the finish line. It kind of dovetails, I think, nicely with something I wanted to ask you about, which was a resounding, what I've called Democratic dominance of results yesterday from Election Day across the U.S. And one notable win was in the state of Virginia, for example, Dan, where you had Jay Johnson, who won as the Attorney General in the state of Virginia. And I have been explaining to people that getting more Democratic attorneys general in office is a game changer, because this SNAP benefits litigation, if the Trump administration didn't say, hey, we're going to release these contingency funds for the purpose for which they were designed and designated, it's only the states that were a part of the litigation for the SNAP benefits, including yours in Oregon, that would have been the beneficiaries of these federal court rulings. It would have been the blue states, and the blue states that had the governors that joined, which is why it kind of shows the importance of making sure that our electeds in roles like yours are thinking about their constituents, regardless of party affiliation, in the states that they represent.
Yeah, it really changed the landscape and the importance of those elections, no doubt. It is, and I'm sure that weighed into all of the elections this cycle. I think what was really interesting to watch is we have this affordability crisis. You have this divide of wealth inequality, that permeates throughout all 50 states. And the real successful people were talking very succinctly about those issues and why it was so darn important, whether it was in the governor's races, whether it was in the mayor's race, or whether it was in the attorney general race. And how are we going to address these issues with different tools in different offices, right? As attorney general, we have an entirely different set of tools than, say, if you're the governor of the state of New Jersey or Virginia. And so I think it was very resounding to see what people are looking for right now. You had President Trump talking about how he's going to really help us economically, and he's done absolutely the opposite. And I think people feel betrayed by that. I know I certainly do.
There's other litigation that I always like to highlight that you're doing, the work that your office is doing, because while you're having to deal with the Trump administration, it's not like you're only focusing on certain things. And there's a couple of cases just very quickly that I wanted to take advantage of having you here to talk about. One of them deals with a lawsuit that you just brought 2 days ago, where you sued the Department of Education, or whatever the hell's left of it, let's be honest, right? Because the Department of Education is now deciding that they're going to play judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to student loans and forgiveness of loans if people who are the loan recipients end up going into jobs in government and nonprofits that the Trump administration has decided don't deserve it, either because they are, improper or not the right kind of jobs that you should be having. It blows my mind that they're trying to, disincentivize people doing public service, but that's exactly what they're doing. It's arbitrary, it's capricious, and it's illegal.
Well, and again, as part of this bigger, broader plan, why are we attacking students, right, with student loan debt, right? When you're starting off in life at a disadvantage, right? You are coming out trying to get a job in the hole. In some cases, these people have student loan debts, so they're half the price of a house.
Yep.
In circumstances, and that are trying to incentivize public service. There is a really I don't understand the rationality of why you want to go after things like food assistance, why you want to go after healthcare for the most needy. Why do you want to go after folks that really invested in themselves, right, and are trying to get off on the right foot? I would argue that from an economic perspective, we want to help these people get out of debt as fast as possible and get into a house, start moving forward in life. But we're just seem to be taking massive steps backwards. At the same time, you're doing these tax packages that are impacting, frankly, benefiting the wealthy folks, and all those tax benefits that could possibly help folks that are struggling, those sunset. So it's a real clear path and pattern that we're on right now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight something that the Department of Education's rule, Dan, that we are talking about right now. They are saying that they are targeting jobs that have a, quote, substantial illegal purpose, those employers, for people that got these public service loan forgiveness. And the way that they're defining what's illegal are activities, for example, that support undocumented immigrants, which is something that we're all trying to be mindful of and trying to provide help for. Providing gender-affirming healthcare to transgender youth, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and engaging in political protests. It is clearly an attack also on people's ability to exercise their First Amendment rights. I mean, the fact that they're trying to gatekeep what people are doing for jobs, in my mind, is insane when people are trying to do something in public service. And last but not least, Dan, before I have to let you go, because I know you're wildly busy, I want to ask you about the other lawsuit that you just brought, which was just yesterday, because you don't sleep at all. And your office brought a lawsuit against Kristi Noem. I keep my pejoratives to myself. The Department of Homeland Security, Secretary David Richardson, and FEMA, because now, once again, the Trump administration has taken money that's already been allocated by Congress and earmarked for specific purposes, including for Oregon, to be able to be getting the money it needs for firefighters, first responders, law enforcement. And now the Trump administration says, sorry, we're not going to give you the money. Make it make sense.
You can't make it make sense. Even when you watch those videos in the airport of her, none of this makes sense. In fact, I think it makes less sense when you're doing that. But it's just this weird dynamic that we have right now, that the connection of the money that they're trying to cut, whether it's FEMA grants, wildfire stuff, it is... It makes absolute no sense. And it's things that universally, if you talk to Americans or Oregonians just on the street and you say, hey, is this something we should be funding? It's a resounding yes. And I don't know why they feel it is so important to hold these funds hostage. It makes no sense.
Well, it's like, listen, you talked about them weaponizing food. They're weaponizing infrastructure, right? And they're weaponizing disaster relief. I just read this article from the Oregon NPR about Columbia Memorial Hospital in Astoria, Oregon. And they were supposed to get money from FEMA to tsunami-proof a hospital, which provides health care and medical services to Republicans and Democrats and independents alike, right? And now FEMA's like, yeah, we're not going to give you the money for that. It just blows my mind that they are so short-sighted that they don't understand that this is not supposed to be hurting just the Democrats to, quote, own the libs. Like, there's a reason why your office is thoughtfully pursuing this litigation on behalf of all people in Oregon and not just certain.
Well, I mean, you think about agriculture just across the United States right now. I mean, a lot of the policies that the president is moving forward is hurting, frankly, his very own base. And for whatever reason, it is. I'm not sure that is fully resonating with people yet. But I think over time, I mean, we haven't even reached 1 year of this presidency. I think as this begins to sink in, I think you'll start to see, you'll start to see some Republicans push back. I mean, you're seeing it now on tariffs. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens over the next, over the next year.
Well, I'm going to let you go before you keel over on me and they blame me in your office for having been responsible for that. But all kidding aside, I know you're wildly busy, as we have heard, but today was a really pivotal day because I feel like this was the test balloon, like the trial balloon for SCOTUS when it comes to reining in some executive overreach from Trump. And I'm proud to say that I know you, that you're leading the charge and that you're doing all this great work. So, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, thanks for being here and getting us caught up on all this important litigation.
Always fun to talk about this stuff with you anytime.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.